I'm politely waiting until these side conversations are over. We're all set, right? All right. Minutes late here, but I would like to call to order this Committee of the Whole meeting for the Kalamazoo City Commission for Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. Good to see everybody. Appreciate having you here. Clerk Bowling, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Decker.
Present.
Commissioner Hess.
Present.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Present.
Commissioner Juarez. Commissioner Pradel.
Present.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. Thank you, Clerk Borling. May we have a motion to excuse Commissioner Juarez from this meeting?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Hoffman, supported by Vice Mayor Cooney. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? All right, it's excused. Communications, City Manager Ritzma.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you so much. Now is the opportunity for public comments. Just as a reminder, public comments are 2 minutes in length at the Committee of the Whole meeting. You can make them in person if you're here in the chambers, or you can call in. The number to call in with your public comments is 888-382-9556. In addition, there is a public comment period that occurs during our business meeting, which starts at 7. Anyone in the chambers who wants to make a comment during public comment? All right, see no one. Thank you. Good to have you here, sir. Jeff Chamberlain, has anybody called in with a public comment?
All right, we'll go ahead and check here for a second. We do not.
Thank you very much, DCM Chamberlain. Then we are on to the work of this Committee of the Whole meeting. Manager Ritzma.
Well, thank you, Mayor. We have a couple of items this evening under our work session. First, we want to give an update on our fiscal year 2024 budget process. As you recall, we had a commission retreat in February, and believe it or not, it's June, and we will be starting our budgeting process here soon. And so CFO Steve Vicenzi is going to walk the commission through the budget process and give an update on that. Steve?
Welcome, Steve.
Yeah, quick run through of where we are with our 2024 budget process. As the city manager just mentioned, you guys had a retreat back in February where you worked to identify and define your commission priorities for this budget. We have instructed departments to create funding proposals to help meet those priorities for the year, and just to kind of, review and help the public understand as well what those 10 commission priorities were for the year. We have poverty reduction, which includes reducing intergenerational poverty, increasing financial literacy, and workforce development. Sustainability, which was focused on reducing emissions, alternative energy, reducing waste, and increasing recycling in the city. Gun violence reduction, which is especially focused on youth, also decreasing police contacts with at-risk youth and increasing participation with the at-risk youth. Housing, which is affordable housing for all, addressing homelessness, arrearages, home repairs, and addressing racial and income disparities. Youth, creating places and supports for young people to thrive, increasing access to childcare, supporting summer youth programming. Environmental justice, which is reducing pollution, remediating contaminations, and tree planting. Diversity, equity, inclusion, which our focus will be on improving our human rights scorecard and increasing our DEI education. Economic development, creating jobs and businesses, increasing the retention rate for city-supported businesses. Communications and community relationship building, timely and effective communication, strengthening our community collaboration. and mobility and utilities, which is improving our non-motorized network, increasing and improving our sidewalk network, and increasing the number of roads repairs and improving water affordability. So those are kind of what came out of that February retreat and what our departments have been focused on creating those funding proposals for 2024. We also review and rank all of our proposals on our main program quality factors. These have been in place for a couple of years. They're kind of to help us form that base to ensure that all items moving forward have been vetted and under a number of different priorities here. And really just kind of highlight, I'll go through these really quickly because we've been through them before. Ensure that's in line with our IK 2025 long-term plan. Continuing to promote equitable outcomes, that these programs have evidence or evaluation planning, so that way we can come back and show what we did with these programs or that we've been measuring them throughout the time that they've been in place. Shovel readiness, which impacts how quickly can a program get started. You know, we sometimes get proposals that say, well, I need 2 years to ramp up. And so we understand that, and that does have a bit of an effect of how soon does that get into the budget as well. Level and scale of impact. Some programs are focused on a small area, others are focused on the entire city or even a regional benefit to our area. And so all of that has an impact to how we rate these. Past performance, if it's a program that's been in place, that kind of touches with the evidence and evaluation. If it's been in place, what is the evidence? How is it ranked? What has it improved? Being able to measure that. Financial sustainability, understanding if it's a one-time ask for a project, or if it's a permanent ask, or if it's a project that will eventually generate revenue and help offset future costs. Those all have impacts for what we can fit into our budget. And then finally here, mandates, which are we under a federal, state, or other mandate to perform such service or project. Now I'll get into the little bit more interesting items here. So we have received requests from our departments for the year. We've received 70 requests from them, totaling $31.3 million for the 2024 budget, and an estimated $65.2 million 5-year impact to our 5-year plan. These commissions touch on every single one of those commission priority areas that we discussed. You know, based on the amount of requests, we're not going to be able to fit all of them in right away, but it's something that as we plan and layer, you know, the more we can get in the next 5-year period. And then what we're really kind of going to be working on is peer reviewing and making sure that we find the best dollars that fit the program. Those dollars can be FFE, they can be ARPA, it can be city general fund, but that's where we kind of have to help the departments find the right fit for what they're requesting. And then just one final update I want to kind of give here is with ARPA, we have to commit it by December 31, 2024. So, and then spend it by the end of 2026. And so with ARPA, the commitment means that we have to have a contract or some other agreement in place. So as we're looking at these requests, timeliness is a huge factor for how we use those funds. And then I'll just kind of briefly touch on next steps here. Our peer review team is looking at those requests. They'll be working on that through July, working with departments, making sure we're understanding them, ranking them appropriately. They'll then come back and work with our city manager's office in July and August to ensure that, to review the scores, ensure our understanding of the projects that are presented, and find the best budget fit for those items. And then we'll also be working with Commission in August and September to kind of communicate and keep in touch with what's being presented, what's being asked to move forward, and then we'll be formally presenting the budget in December 1st. So just kind of a real quick update because we're still in the very early stages of our request proposals. We'll also be starting our operational budget in August, so that's kind of a separate step that's yet to come. But I'll kind of open it up there with any questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Steve. Questions, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the information. I did have a quick question. What is the amount of unallocated ARPA funds that we still have out?
Our current unallocated ARPA, which is everything beyond 2023, is $17.2 million.
And with some of the requests that have come in from the departments, do you think that we'll be using most or allocating most, if not all of that, before the end of the year? Because we have until 2024 to.
The goal would be to try to allocate all of it here in the 2024 budget. Otherwise, we'll have to come back for budget amendment or special approval for additional projects, just in order to meet the obligation deadline set by the federal government.
Okay. Are you guys planning on coming to the commission for a mid-year budget amendment, or do we not know that yet?
We are not planning on a mid-year per se like we did last year. We are planning on our standard kind of mid-year budget amendments that occur regularly, but we did not run a special process last year that was done to try to get the ARPA dollars out the door as quickly as possible. Now that we've got a lot of projects approved and that they're moving, we didn't feel the same urgency to advance it quite as quickly this year.
Can you also tell me what is in the budget for the city commission for allocation?
We have, I'm going to round it off. Right now it's $130,000 the current year. So it's $100,000 plus we carried forward the unallocated funds from last year.
Okay, the reason I asked that is I know that I was looking for funding to assist our summer programs with the youth. Sometimes it seems like there seems to be a barrier getting these individuals to and from the activities that we put into place to kind of curb some of the crime and some of the gun violence that's helping, and also the outreach. So just in your thoughts, if the commission decided to, say, assist in getting transportation for these youth, at-risk youth, and for these summer programs, is that something within those funds that we have that the city commission would be able to allocate?
I believe so. I'd like to probably run that by the city attorney as well, because that would be use of general fund dollars. I don't see a particular issue off the top of my head, though.
Out of all the requests that you receive, if you're able to talk about them now, which areas do you see the greatest need for funding? Every area is in great need, but if you had to pick, when you talk about the commission priorities, poverty reduction, sustainability, gun violence, housing, youth, environmental justice, DEI, economic development, communications and community relationship buildings, mobility, utilities, just from what you've kind of seen trickling in so far, what would you say would be the top 3 of requests?
That's kind of a tough question for me to answer. I try not to put myself in that position as far as, because I'm part of the team that's ranking the requests as well. I'd say we have a good representation across the board for all items. If we look back at our previous ARPA funds, we've allocated a lot to housing and youth. So not to mean that we can't allocate more to that going forward, but it's kind of taking that bigger picture in place, and I haven't quite gotten my head around that at this point since we just got the request in the last few weeks.
And I know that, when we had our retreat back in February, I know that we're also looking for things that we know that we can do quickly if we have the funds to get them done. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Decker. Other questions, commissioners? Commissioner Juarez?
Yeah, I just had some thoughts in my mind, right? I mean, roughly, you said we have estimate unallocated money, roughly around $17.2 million. We have 10 priorities. If from an equitable standpoint, if you divvied it up, every priority, those 10 priorities, you'd be given $1.7 million to each priority, right?
Correct.
So why not do that?
I think the biggest question right there is proper funding source. So one project may fit really well in ARPA, another one may not qualify or may fit really well into the general fund, or vice versa. And so it's not to say that we won't give a similar amount to the different priorities. It's just a matter of finding the right fit. So maybe 20 million overall, but it may be some from the capital improvement plan, some from our solid waste budget, some from ARPA, some from a different grant, and then kind of taking that impact as a whole.
So wouldn't you have a rough idea what you could use ARPA money for, though, at this point, when it comes to stuff that could be, that we could allocate money to?
Yes, so ARPA, the main focus from the federal government is anything that's been impacted from the COVID-19 pandemic, with, focus on youth and utilities are also separate breakouts. We also have the ability to provide most governmental services through ARPA as well, through what's called revenue replacement. So ARPA is pretty wide open. It's just a matter of, if something fits into a less wide open bucket and we can kind of switch programs around to make sure, okay, maybe we'll do 100% of the housing in ARPA because that's more wide open and more fits that budget, where we may not be able to do some of those housing programs out of the general fund.
Okay, roughly how many of these priorities would fit into the ARPA, like, you could place this and you could use ARPA money right away? Roughly, how many of these could you do that?
I would say every single one.
Every single one?
Yes.
Oh. Okay.
Other questions, commissioners? No? Commissioner Pradel? No questions? Right. So I just wanted to make a comment on this, Manager Isma and Mr. Cincy, is that I do appreciate, keeping this conversation going, and the recognition also that we'll have some initial review here of this proposal coming up quite shortly, as a matter of fact, here, August/September. And I think that's that's a positive thing. And in some cases, it really wasn't, we didn't really have as much an open door to kind of talking about that until later in the year, closer to the time when the charter requires you to provide the budget to us. So I think I appreciate that. That's positive progress. And these, of course, we can talk about these kinds of items at any time, but just kind of keeping it top of mind as we're working towards 24 is helpful. So thank you for that. Oh, Vice Mayor Cooney.
Thank you. So when we're allocating money and we talk about poverty reduction, the money has to fit into a plan for poverty reduction. And I'm wondering what that plan is. Do we have a plan? I mean, what are we going to do? What's our strategy for poverty reduction?
I mean, I think, I don't have, the
No,
specifics of that. Okay,
I'm
sorry.
not even asking
Don,
you to
you
answer it.
gave him a loaded question. You better figure it out right now, Vincenzi. Tell us how you're gonna figure out poverty, right now.
Please, give me through. No, I'm just saying we should have a strategy here about poverty reduction. And I'm not sure that we do. In fact, I know we don't. So I would like us to think about that and to see what we're going to do about poverty reduction, and then talk about how much is that going to cost and where should we put in those money. I'd like to see that happen.
Good point, Vice Mayor. Just, have anyone else a first chance to, anyone else at this point? Commissioner Brito? Or, I'm sorry, all right, Commissioner Hoffman.
Dr. Cooney, that brings up a conversation we began a couple of years ago in community with the county around reparations. So what does that look like? Could that be part of a plan that we begin to address, or even just begin to do some research? I know that they've been able to do some kind of a plan with reparations in California. And so should we be looking to California and Illinois to see what can we create that's Kalamazoo specific? I know in Illinois, they did a lot around home ownership. However, not every household or family wants to be a homeowner. So how do we also represent and really serve those individuals who don't want to do that? California has been very aggressive, and I think we can look to those communities to begin to look at poverty reduction. Thank you.
Commissioner Brito?
Sure. Steve, thanks for being here tonight. I was just curious, obviously there's a bit of an economic uncertainty, everything from the housing market to, hyperinflation. And I'm just kind of curious, like, as you're looking out in these, 2024, 2025, 2026, what, economic headwinds are you kind of like trying to anticipate or keeping a particular eye on, or things that you anticipate could have implications on just our general budgeting for the city?
Yeah, right now I think some of the biggest factors to focus on are where we'll end up with interest rates. That affects a lot of things from housing down to what people can afford day to day. And then the other one would be really watching the housing, because that's our biggest revenue for the general fund is taxes. So just kind of keeping an eye on those things. Right now, everything seems okay, but I think there's, everyone can kind of see the bigger picture that we don't know what tomorrow brings. But it's kind of like plan for the worst, but also prepare for what's more likely to happen. Because if I would have been planning for the worst, we'd be planning for huge downside right now, but we're not really seeing that, at least not yet. And it may not ever come. I think just looking at the macroeconomic picture, you never quite know what will happen in 6 months.
Yes, Commissioner Juarez.
So, I feel bad for you because like you present the numbers, you're like, this is just a picture, bro. And like, it's like, you guys figure it out up there. Don't, and so I appreciate the hard work you do. And part of me wonders, like I think about the impact a lot, right? I think about the impact of what we do, right? And I think a lot of times we find ourselves creating committees and saying, oh, you want to do youth? Okay, let's do that from this point, right? But we never had this opportunity where we can say, like, this is what we're looking at in 2024. How do we create something now to rally around that and build that up? Like Don's saying, like, I believe that. And the other thing for us to think about is how many of these things can you lump together and put money towards, right? Because there's going to be, some of these things there's a byproduct to figuring out poverty reduction. You're going to lower gun violence. You're going to lower, certain things. I mean, and some of these things you can almost put together and saying, this is a plan. But the opportunity that we have to do something about all these 10 priorities and knowing that 2024 is coming, instead of saying, oh, this is on the budget, now let's create a committee, how do we do that now, right? How do we do that now? I think the urgency behind it, because, I mean, it is scary to have a priority of poverty reduction on your plan, on our plan, and we have nothing in place for it. We have some things, I mean, shared prosperity does some things. Don, I mean, you can speak to that more than anything, but, you don't have to. But the reality is that how do we really reduce poverty? For me, poverty is a mindset, right? And we see it time and time again. You can give resources to somebody and it helps their situation right now, but are their minds transformed? Are their minds thinking different, right? And so I think it's a huge thing when we think about poverty reduction, like how do we figure out the mind part behind it? And it's a huge thing. So, I mean, I feel like we have an opportunity, Don, to do something about it because it's, 2024. But that's right around the corner. Those are just comments. No questions for you.
Commissioner Hoffman.
I'm so excited for this call today because this is exactly what I wanted us to have dialogue, right? Poverty is not just a mindset. It has been systemic and it has been insidious for people of color. So we have not always been afforded the opportunity. Now, once we're here, yeah, you can do programming. And I agree with you, it doesn't just take programs. There has to be relationships built into it. And I don't think that this body is the one to do the programming. I think we can allocate funds and make sure that they're going to communities and to organizations that are really doing deep work, intentional work. But poverty is not just a mindset, it is a state of being for many individuals in our community, not choices that they made to be in. So I just wanted to say that because it's bigger than a mindset. You have people of color who cannot get a good job based on a justice system that has been inequitable. We have families and individuals who have been torn apart. It wasn't a mindset that literally happened, and it continues to happen. So there's more to it than being a mindset.
I do share some belief in that. Because I think even from the context, of my faith, let's talk about that for 1 second. In the scriptures, there's a passage that I just hold dear to my heart, and it's in Romans 12:1. It says, "Do not be conformed to the ways of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind," right? So I put that on top of my life, and I say, well, how do I do that, right? And I see the experience of especially the Hispanic community. If we think about the immigrants that come to this country with nothing on their backs, with a system that does cause poverty, but see the amount of business owners, amount of things they accomplish because of the way they think. I've seen multiple, like my grandfather, great story, comes to the U.S., 1952, starts a job cutting dead palm trees in California for 52 cents a palm, 100 feet palms. The reason I say it's a mindset, because that mindset drives behavior. Behavior drives results. And I do believe that there's a system in place that creates barriers for people of color. I do not deny that at the end of the day. But today I stand with a personal choice to do something different. And if we can create opportunities for people to step into that and create systems that they thrive in, that's different. That's complete holistic transformation. So I also don't, I want us to think about it holistically. Yes, there's systems. Yes, the mindset. But I feel like man, you can't take my intellect from me. You can lock me up, but you can't take what I know in my mind. You can't. And and I've seen it over time, but there's a lot of work to be done, I do believe. And we should have those conversations soon, very soon.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
Commissioner
you.
Hoffman.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Juarez. And the Word of God also says in John 12 that the poor will always be among us. Always be among us. So that means those that are in power and who have positions of authority and influence, we have to be more generous, because you can't teach some of these things away. So if we know that, then how does this body act in a way where love is leading and we have parameters so we can get people to another level? That's just what it is. It's all of that and some more. So I really want us that when you said poverty is a mindset, that is a piece of it, but there are a whole list of other things happening with that, and understanding that we will always have people in our community who will need more than others. And how do we as a body, how do we acknowledge that and then move progressively towards not reacting but being proactive?
Commissioner Decker, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, I'm just listening to the great conversations that are happening here at our COW Committee of the Whole, which is, I feel, the conversations that need to be had at the Committee of the Whole meeting. And I just kind of want to piggyback on what Commissioner Juarez said. Is you're right. I look at some of these, and some of these can be placed together. I mean, you talk about the poverty reduction. I know Public Works. It'd be nice to get some information on this program again. Had the program to where if you were struggling to pay your water bill, these are funds that can go into there. That's going to help some of that poverty reduction. When you talk about, you see economic development, that also comes, I feel, with communications and community relationship building. Because as we talk more with our community and we talk and build those relationships, we're going to find out what kind of businesses are here, what they're doing to help individuals when they need a job. So I'm just stressing right now is that I love this dialogue. and this is what we need. I believe, thank you, City Attorney Robinson, for sending me the information regarding when former Commissioner Jack Urban requested, we do away with the weekly meetings that the commissioners got together with. And I think that when they did that, that is the reason that they wanted the cow in place. So we can have deliberation and talk about things that the community wants to hear about, and talk about things that we want to say in a public setting to be transparent. So I don't know if this is just the committee of the whole, so I'll probably wait to the business meeting to make a motion, unless I can do it now. City Attorney Robinson, no? Yes?
Depends on what the motion is. This is really not where you're going to take action.
Okay, yep, perfect. But I just wanted clarification on that, because again, this is the dialogue that we need to have, and this is the dialogue that our community is looking for. And I just had to say that out loud because I stand fast in those words.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
So, this is a great dialogue. This is the dialogue we need to have, right? So I just want to say a couple things. There is history. People are poor because of history. What has happened is gone. Yesterday we celebrated Juneteenth, and we know that people are hurting because of the history of this country, and people have been put in positions where they're going to end up in poverty. So that's one piece of it. The mindset is really important, but one of the things that change people's mindset is when they have hope, when they see a way out, when they get some resources. Another thing, third thing I would want to point out is we know what reduces poverty. In the war on poverty was imperfect, but between 1959 and 1969, the poverty rate in the country was cut in half. We know that when COVID came and they gave the family allowance to people, the poverty rate among children dropped 47%. So we're not in the dark. This isn't like something we're going to start from nothing. There's a lot of history here that we can learn from, and I think we need to learn from. And there's cities that have made improvements, and we have to look at that.
Yeah.
Commissioner Juarez?
So I appreciate that, and I truly believe that. There's a passage in the Bible where the apostle Peter and John go to the gate called Beautiful in Bethsaida, where their healing pool was. The man at the gate that was, he couldn't walk. He was born that way. He says, "Hey, I'm looking for some money." Peter and John says, "Silver and gold I do not have, but what I do have will give you life. Pick up your mat and walk." And I truly believe that there's three types of poverty that we don't talk about. We always talk about the physical poverty. We always talk about what we can see and what we know to be true because we see it, right? But I also believe that there's a spiritual poverty. There is an emotional poverty that exists within our communities. And those things play a part in how people live life, how they exist. And so I think what everybody's saying is great stuff, good stuff, all important. It's part of the whole, the whole thing. But I'd be remiss to say if spiritual poverty is not an issue, if emotional poverty is not an issue. We always think about the one poverty, and we always talk about the one poverty is the physical poverty. We see it, we know it to be true. We see the homeless encampments, we see, people's living situations, and so I think it's interesting that we're having this conversation. Before I came here, a guy showed up to my house. I'm not gonna say his name, but I've been dealing with him for years, right? He's homeless. He's like, "Astor, I just need this." I said, "Danny, I'm at a point in my life where I want to help you, but I can't. Because you're not willing to do the other things that are gonna keep you from being in the same spot." And he's like, "All right, I'm willing." So then come back tomorrow at noon and we'll talk. And if he shows up tomorrow, then I'm gonna take the steps to help him. But there's a bunch of more stuff there. I'm even learning in myself the emotional poverty that I have. growing up and all the trauma I grew up, right? And there's like a lot. And I'm figuring this stuff out, right? And my therapist, she's like, you need to work on these things. And she's teaching me different things and attachment behaviors and all this other stuff. It's so interesting. But when you come to know it, then you can deal with it. My wife's like, I've been telling you that stuff all these years. I'm like, well, I didn't know it then. So give me some grace, right? And I'm like, now I know it. Now I can put my finger on where the problem is. Now I get to have the wisdom to move different, to act different, to respond different. And so I think it's holistic. It's a wraparound. It's much more than just mindset. You're right. It's physical. It's systemic. It's all those things. So I bet you, I double dare you to do something about it, Don. Double dog dare you, Hoffman.
Other, Commissioner Hess.
I'll just say this one thing. Thank you, everybody, for the conversation and the dialogue. Awesome stuff. Being the education person up here, I think it's a level of education that's available everywhere here in this city. Spiritual education is available here. Academic education is available here. Education about poverty is available here. Education for me, about how to help those in poverty is available here. Everything in this town is available, and it's allowing the resources that help those in need of those resources get them. I think we should claim education as one of our values as well. But we already have as a city. I think we just need to say it. So yeah, as we educate about poverty, you're an educator, so are you. It's alignment between needs and wants and giving hope. Education gives hope. So I hope we can continue to do that as a city.
So, Steve, this conversation has ranged far and wide. Thank you for staying up here through all of that. Any other questions or thoughts for Steve here before he steps away? No. All right. Yes, Commissioner Decker. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Real quick, Steve. I just wanted to kind of put out there I know our team does a great job, but really think of what Commissioner Juarez said and see what kind of plans we can put into place if we don't already have one in place, or they're still working on us, or still working on them for our priorities, because I agree with them. 2024 is right around the corner. These funds have to be allocated. And if we have good, concise ideas and plans and processes for when we come to the decision of allocating these 17.2 million funds, I think everything's going to go so much smoother. So I just reiterate, again, if we can come up with some good plans, that'd be great. And if we've got systems already in place and plans already in place, what else we can do to not rebuff, but to give those plans a little bit more oomph if we give them a little bit more money. Thanks.
All right. Once again, thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Thank you, Manager Risma. We have a second part of our committee of the whole here.
Yes, I'd like to ask our communications manager, Mike Smith, to come forward. And you'll recall Mike came to us last year, and I know the commission has talked a lot about communications and how we communicate with the public and all of that. So Mike has worked with the team and put together this communications plan that we'd love to roll out for you. And Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Smith. Yes.
Great conversation, by the way. Mayor Anderson, Vice Mayor Cooney, City Commissioners, City Manager Risma, and City Attorney Robertson. Appreciate you having me here to talk about communication issues as well. So it's a pleasure to be here to present this plan to you. And I've been looking at preparing a communication plan for pretty much almost a year. And it's amazing that I've been here just about a year now, and it's been an incredible experience for me. So going forward, what we want to do in terms of the plan that we're talking about here, the executive summary, we're talking about supporting city goals as outlined by Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 and the community's vision for our future as well. We also want to highlight city engagement. We talk about engagement a lot with key stakeholders. We talk about the citizens, the neighborhoods and community groups, the business community, the county and regional governments, educational institutions as well, city departments and staff too. And then we also want to look at establishing annual strategic priorities in collaboration with the departments and also with you, the Kalamazoo City Commission as well. This is what we're talking about in terms of establishing these guiding principles surrounding the communications realm. We're talking about information that is connected and consistent, talking about open communications, providing for government transparency when possible for all audiences. We want to be responsive quickly to change. And we also want to be accessible, making information easy to find and available to all audiences as well. And again, I think we do a good job in terms of making information accessible, especially throughout social media, through the website, news and information, the newsletters that are distributed on a quarterly basis as well, and you've seen those as well. So we want to continue that process too. Being proactive, talking about engaging the community and stakeholders before being asked. And again, the examples we're talking about, the social media platforms that we have, the newsletters, the FFE, the Vision from the Curb newsletters as well. So those are things that we do to be more proactive as well. Now, this is the organizational chart that we have here. You have the communications manager, which is me, of course, the public safety PIO, which is Jay Chitara. We have the marketing and communications specialist, who is Amanda Cockcroft, and also the communications coordinator, who is Neil Conway. Jay has been with the city for, I think, a little more than a year now. And of course, he oversees a lot of the media relations for public safety, as well as social media and public safety announcements too. Neil and Amanda, you folks have worked with both of them for quite a while now. They are really, really great at what they do in terms of videos, photography, the newsletters that they produce as well. They are fantastic, and it's a real pleasure and a blessing to have them in the roles that they do as well. Okay, the structure that we're talking about here, this is an outline of how we envision communications to flow. So with the communication structure that we're showing here, the communication and information flows from departments and city leadership, including the city commission, into the city manager's office and communications. So the way you can see the arrows pointing there from city leadership and city communications, the city commission, and also the departments as well. The communication will flow into the city manager's office as well. And by doing so, this is where we will establish and implement plans to highlight city communications. We'll oversee communications and media relations for departments and staff, and we will utilize communication platforms for city boards, reports, utilities, public services, and human resources. And finally, we will establish and implement the plans to highlight city communications. And we'll deliver this information and communications to audiences. Those are the deliverables you see in the red there. So we're talking about residents, community stakeholders, and the media. Okay, so here are the goals and objectives with the strategic communication plan. We're talking about telling our story. That's the first goal, providing a conduit for sharing timely, accurate, important, and relevant information to internal and external audiences. The objectives we have here: regularly communicating employment, training, and development opportunities, and connecting with department leadership to provide guidance on media relations and projects. And you'll see to the right, you'll see where it says action highlights. And those are where we're talking about implementing these goals and objectives in terms of the speeches and talking points, media relations regarding programs and services, promoting DEI initiatives, and then establishing content and community calendars that highlight the messaging for the city as well. Now, most of these actions we're pretty much already doing and already a work in progress as well. So we talk about next in terms of goals and objectives, public engagement, creating initiatives to engage the public in their local government through participation at events, through the digital platforms, and with city services. The objectives we're talking about here are the increasing awareness and participation in city programs and providing dependable, accurate communication through community platforms. The action highlights engaging, leveraging the relationships with partner organizations, funding recipients, and neighborhood associations through Imagine Kalamazoo 2025. And then establishing a database and maintaining outreach to community stakeholders and other area contacts as well. The third goal, brand management. We want to make sure that the city brand is used consistently and brand messages are used appropriately and often in all communications that we do. So the objectives here, we're talking about communication that adheres to community industry best practices and standards and unify city communication outreach under a shared philosophy. So basically what we're doing, we're saying all under the same page in terms with regard to what we say and how we look. And again, the action highlights, we're talking about creating templates such as Word, letterhead, PowerPoints, digital and social media content, and again, ensuring the brand consistency in speeching, statements, and talking points and briefing documents, pretty much in everything we do. Goal number 4, emergency communication. And this is the top priority for every city and municipality, as you all know. We want to look at establishing a crisis communication strategy with public safety, messaging, information sharing, preparing the staff, and managing media relations. And the objectives we're talking about would be complementing and collaborating with existing plans and emergency management team, and informing the public through media and other channels, and reporting these issues to senior leadership as well. The action highlights, we're talking again about preparing speeches and statements and talking points, briefing documents on the situation at hand, distributing the media releases regarding the situation. We're talking about coordinating communication engagement with other organizations throughout the Kalamazoo County, and then submitting accurate data to engage with city leaders on crisis response. These are actions that we pretty much currently do, and we also work closely with Brandy James, whom I believe you met back in April, in which she presented the public safety plan as well. So those are things that we're doing with regard to emergency communication and what we plan to do as well. Goal number 5, media relations. We want to develop and maintain positive working relationships with members of the media. We want to be proactive in terms of the media releases, the briefs and the media advisories and other announcements that we do. We want to review and respond to media requests in a timely manner and basically as quickly as we can. And we also want to update and align media relations policy that's consistent with industry trends as well. The action highlights here, we're talking about making sure that we distribute media releases regarding the programs and services, direct communication, I should say, with reporters to deliver that information, discuss stories, ideas as well, scheduling interviews, promoting events and activities and announcements through social media, and conducting an audit of current media relations policy as well. And again, these are things that we're pretty much doing on a regular basis and ongoing right now as well. Number 6, employee engagement communications. We want to talk about informing internal audiences on communication initiatives and channels. We want to increase engagement through staff ambassador encouragement. We want to build awareness and support, among staff on effective communication. And also we want to educate staff on social media to encourage social media interaction as well. Highlights we're talking about here would be establishing cross-department communications team. That's something that we have developed during my time here. We also want to work with Tanya Hewitt-Smith, the DEI Director, on DEI initiatives that strengthen and enhance hiring, retention, and promotion of employees. And then also coordinating with Human Resources to provide surveys on workplace topics too. I've had conversations with Shelley Dusick on this, and she's really excited about that possibility as well. And then finally, you folks, City Commission Communications, supporting the mission to provide leadership and policy direction for the community, assisting with communication decisions. That's something that in my time with you, I've been happy to work with some of you as well on some of your communications projects like presentations, speeches and talking points, letters, things like that you have done during my time here. So I want to continue that process and working with you in that regard as well. Facilitating timely and effective communication with the public through various tactics, interacting with neighborhood associations through social media, and then finally recognizing staff at commission meetings. And this is something that I recall a conversation about during the commission retreat back in February, in terms of recognizing staff and the great work that the 670 or so staff members with the city do. And I remember hearing some of you talking about whether and how we might look at ways to recognize the work that city staff do. So that's something that I think we can explore toward the end of the year or sometime in the next year as well. Here is an outline of methods that the actions I've highlighted will utilize toward implementing the goals and objectives that you've seen so far. And these are tactics, basically, that we do for the most part, and we'll focus more on these in the coming months as well. So again, we're talking about press releases and speeches, the statements and talking points. We talked about the community contacts database, the staff mailers that have gone out to households, and we do that on a consistent basis as well. We mentioned the social media channels, the city website, the email newsletters that go out especially to city commissioners as well. Language translation is something we want to look at. It's expanding as well. And FFE communications and 311 communications as well. So again, those are some of the things that we're currently doing and we'll want to continue doing through the tactics that we have established here as well. So, and then in terms of measurement, the key outcomes and performance indicators review, we're looking at quarterly growth in online and social media postings, 6-month growth in people who receive email or newsletters, open rates and click-through rates in terms of measurement, annual growth and positive approval ratings. We have the National Community Survey that we see every so often, every year or every couple of years, I believe. And then the employee climate surveys on workplace satisfaction as well. That is pretty much the communication strategy plan that I put together, basically. And I want to really give a really shout out to the Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, Laura Lamb, the Chief Operating Officer, and the Assistant City Manager, Rebecca Kick, for helping me put this plan together. When I first came to the city, I had an outline in mind of what I wanted to do in terms of a communication strategy, but their input, their knowledge of the city, and especially Imagine Kalamazoo 2025, really helped me in terms of putting this project together. So a shout out to them. This couldn't have happened without their input and their support as well. Finally, I want to say, again, I've been here just about a year now. It's been a real thrill to be a part of the city. I've been in Kalamazoo for probably close to 40 years now, and I've done a lot of different things over the years. Higher education, communications, healthcare, corporate communications, broadcast journalism. And I think in all the years that I've been here, I cannot recall a more engaging and professional staff than the crew that I have to work with. These folks are just outstanding. And I am truly blessed to be a part of city government and be a part of this great team. So thank you for bringing me on board, first of all. And it's a pleasure, to be a part of this great team. So that's the communication plan, and I'll take any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, it's a pleasure having you here with us. Questions from commissioners? Commissioner Decker?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Smith. I know you have assisted me in a few things that I've done for the city here. I did have a couple questions. So this is for 2023 to 2025. And I'm looking at some of the information that's in here and also the action highlights. Do you have specific ones that you're looking to put into place within the next 6 months within these action highlights? I just want to, for clarification, the action highlights are things that you're doing, you want to do, or you want, which one is it?
Well, I think one of the things that we definitely want to do would be in working with Tanya Hewitt-Smith in particular on some of the DEI initiatives as well. And again, I mentioned that in terms of highlighting the policies and procedures and information, and we're talking about enhancing workplace success. And I'm looking forward again to working with her and her DEI coordinator on some of these things that they're talking about doing as well in terms of helping them with communication initiatives and so forth. I think I also mentioned in terms of the community calendar and looking at ways in which we can highlight some of the messaging as well as inform content regarding the columns. And I think we're also looking at maybe editorials and maybe looking at paid opportunities as well through magazine subscriptions and those kinds of things as well. So in past roles that I've had, I've written or ghostwritten columns and speeches for leadership, especially on the corporate side. And those are things that we can look at doing as well. So those are two things that stick out in my mind as well.
Thank you for that. And yeah, definitely working with COO Lamb, because myself and Commissioner Prado have really worked on kind of getting out there within our neighborhood associations to make sure that we're on their calendar. So I definitely think that would be a great little marriage right there.
Yeah.
So I do like the idea of having consistency within all of the communications that go out. Like you said, the templates and certain things like that. We never want anything to sound, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, incorrect, yes. But, scripted and things like that. But there are certain things that we are able to and not able to say. So I think having some kind of consistency there would also be great. When I get to the media relations pages, I just want to express my thoughts in making sure that we are definitely working with our cohorts within the media, making sure that, if we're having public meetings, that they are also invited to these meetings so they can also be able to report out on what is happening, within the city and within the community here. So I definitely want to make sure that we take note of that they are also an integral part of getting our message out to the community and should be able to access any type of public meeting that we have.
And I think building and strengthening the relations that we have with media are critical to who we are and to what we do. And I say that not just because there's someone behind me from the media, but also because of the fact that it's a good business practice, for us as well.
It is, and I'm glad to hear you say that because they're going to inform on the bad and they're going to inform on the good, and we want them to inform on everything again to make sure our community is kept up to date on things that are happening.
Right. Yeah. And I've been on the other side as well, so I know the work that they do and the challenges that they have as well. And so part of my job will be to work with them and to answer questions that they may have. It may not always be in the most timely manner, but eventually, we will work with them and get them the information that they need so they can do their job and report it accurately and consistently as well.
Thank you. One other thing that I want to say is you talked in here about within other organizations, the public also keeping, the public and us informed of meetings that we may not be present at that are going on. I definitely would like to look to getting some more information like that. If you have a meeting about something that's going on that reflects something that could come within the city or to come to us, I know there's communication, but sometimes, just kind of having, what were their meeting minute notes? What did they talk about and things like that. So if we can kind of maybe also focus on that too, I think that is going to allow for a lot more deliberation when we start to have restructured CAL meetings. And again, just keeping everybody abreast, letting everybody know what's going on.
Yep, yep.
I appreciate all that you do. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
And again, it's great to work with you. I know I've worked with you on some of your presentations and communications as well. So happy to do it and happy to continue doing it for everybody else as well. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Brado?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Mike, for being here. You mentioned a few things. Commissioner Decker also brought up about both of us have been working, really trying to prioritize about neighborhood engagement.
Yep.
And I think especially there are opportunities where we can talk about like overarching things that the city is doing, but also tailor our communication strategy specific to those areas that we're going to speak. And I think coming prepared to those to be able to say, hey, this is what we've been able to accomplish this last year. This is what's coming that's going to directly impact you in your neighborhood or your area would be a great benefit for those engagement opportunities. I love them because they're just naturally authentic. Yep. I think one of the things that I've shared with the city manager's office is just my concern of consistency. That was a great word that you used too, because I think it's like we just did one in Vine, and when do we know when we're going to be back to Vine?
Yeah.
They don't know. I don't know. And so it's kind of like, when am I going to see you again? 5 years from now? 5 months from now? And for me, like, it'd be really helpful for engagement. I don't know about everybody else up here, but it would be incredibly helpful if we could say, hey, we're going to commit to be in your neighborhood at least once this year. And your neighborhood, these 2 neighborhoods are assigned the month of June. Mm-hmm. So that way, as things are coming up, we are like, hey, remember, don't forget, 2 months from now, we're going to be back in your neighborhood. Yeah. And I think that consistency and kind of being somewhat prescriptive, but in the same way, like the schedule of topics like COW meetings or business meetings, there's always going to be things that come up that we're going to add and talk about. But if there's some way that we could at least commit one portion of that COW meeting to be a topic that's related to all those priorities, and just cycle through those priorities so we can continue to communicate to the community about how we're advancing those priorities that the community told us they want and that we've conveyed that we want as well, I think would be really helpful. The third thing I know I've shared as well is just staff engagement. We have, like you described, 670 people who do incredible work for this community that are largely our community. And I think there's just a really missed opportunity to let them be here and let us applaud them for great things that they're doing. Yeah. And in some ways, being able to tell the great story about the community by telling their work. We don't have to make up stuff. They're doing it. And so I don't understand, I don't feel like there needs to be a plan to just bring somebody here every single week just until we do have a plan to tell a story and get people feeling like they know that we're aware of what they're doing and they feel like we care. I think the other thing too is I noticed on the slide it says, telling our story. And I think the beauty about being in municipal government is that we're an entity of the people. So in large ways, our story is the people's story and vice versa. And just kind of always thinking through that vein. And then the other thing too, as part of this too, is I think it might be worth, with the new city attorney coming in as well, about our FOIA process and FOIA coordination, because that's an important part of that transparency and communication and how we provide consistency to that and everything. It's a tall order for an office to do, and I think that could definitely fit into this plan as well. But those are just some thoughts. But thank you for everything you've been doing, and thanks for the presentation.
Yes, Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for being here. My mind works in a different way. So this is the question that I have for you. As commissioners, there will become times where we don't necessarily agree with the way that city is moving in response to community and what the community wants. And so how do you suggest that we move when those things happen, right? So we're elected by the people, The residents want one thing, city government has one thing, and we may be closer aligned to community, but how do we strategize and get what community wants and be able to articulate what the city needs? Does that make sense at all? Like, I can see, like, for instance, I'll say when we had the meeting with DHS. I'm a North Side resident. You all know I've been suffering with a chronic cough since 2018. Yet I did not feel compelled to get up and speak that because of my position when I can speak to lived experience. And so how do I stay true to community and also do the job of being a commissioner?
It seems to me that we would be able to provide counseling or consultation, I should say, not counseling, but consultation on initiatives or issues like that that may come up. For example, what's the best approach to take, or how to make the message seem like you have something in mind on behalf of your role as a city commissioner, but at the same time, we can work with you in terms of making that information in the communication consistent with what the city's role is and objectives are as well, if that makes any sense to you too. So I hope that helps. Yeah. In other words, again, providing the consultation and, working with all of you on issues and situations that come up in which you may be pulled in one direction, or you may not have the answers or have any idea what's going on. But again, I think through our office and through the work that I do, would be to work with you in terms of helping you get through those issues or situations. I think a good example I can give you probably would be when I first joined the city back in late July, early August, and we had a situation involving national media and a certain commissioner dealing with the national media, and part of the role of for me would be to work with you on those kinds of situations as well. So if that's helpful.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Commissioner Hess?
Yeah, really briefly, thank you, Mr. Smith, for that presentation. Appreciate it. As long as I've been sitting here, I think we've always been talking about communication, inter-team communication, communication to the public, communication within ourselves. I ask that we continue to be proactive about that. That will build trust. I think when we've had issues and misunderstandings and miscommunications come forward, it's been from a lack of communication, of true, transparent, open communication, and you've given us that since you've been here. Given that the word communication really means to make common, that we have a common understanding of everything, and we're going to hear it tonight with the FUSA system, right? There's been so many different thoughts and ideas and communications going around about FUSIS, and it's caused a lot of people a lot of angst. So I look forward to that conversation, but I think we need to be proactive and that we get out in the community in this regard. And I totally agree, Commissioner Pradel, about bringing someone here every commission meeting to honor them and their work here and have them tell their story. I think that's just so important. And lastly, I really appreciate the work of 311, increasing the communication efforts by the city, listening and listening. Communication is two-way, hearing, speaking. It's not just telling. Yeah. So I do a lot of listening, and I really appreciate your education here tonight because it's helping us to build trust with our community. Appreciate you.
Yep. Thank you.
Other thoughts or comments, commissioners? All right. Well, thank you once again. Two thoughts come to mind for me here, just to round this out, is that, of course, for a long time, where there was not a communications director in the city manager's office for, I don't know, maybe you're the first. I'm not sure about the history here. And now we have you here, thank you, and then suddenly it seems like too big of a job for one person. And this is a lot of things to do. So I appreciate your enthusiasm about that, and I appreciate that we do have that focus. Thank you, Manager Risma. This was something that we've been talking about. Commissioner Pradel had been pushing for years, and so here you are, and now suddenly, you know, the floodgates open, and all this responsibility falls on your shoulders. That said, I'm glad that there's one piece of this that I'm glad you did not overlook, and that is the internal communication side of this. And sometimes we always think about, well, who are we talking to outside of the city? But and I know this isn't fully your responsibility, we certainly have other departments, but for a couple very important reasons. One, those 670 people who are doing the work of the city every day need to feel included and understand, you know, what part they are playing in the values that we're turning into actuality, that they're the ones that are making that work. And sometimes in a big organization, in different departments, you do get very siloed, and it's hard to know even what, you know, feel like you're all on the same page. So I'm really glad you're not overlooking that, the importance of those internal communications to the entire team that works here, very, very important also. So thanks for bringing that up.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally with that. Yep.
So thank you once again.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Decker?
Yep.
A comment? Oh, sure.
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to speak on when we talk about employee recognition. We will be having our employee recognition ceremonies here soon. And I encourage every department, every manager within the city, everyone to look at giving those employees that 2 hours, 1 hour time off if you need to close down the department for 1 or 2 hours, if feasible, so we can really recognize those employees. I had to put that out there.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker.
Yep.
So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, thank you for having me here. So,
Yeah. Appreciate that. Anything else, Manager Risma?
Nothing, Your Honor.
All right. So just as a reminder, we do have a little event here that we're going to next, correct? Before our 7 o'clock meeting. Reflective of that, are there any commissioner comments for this meeting? All right. Just a reminder for the community, we'll have opportunity for commissioner comments in our business meeting starting at 7. Thanks once again for turning this into not just sitting and listening session, but an interacting session. I know we're going to have more conversation about that. At this point, the Committee of the Whole is adjourned.